Zeroing in on Salem. I know what you're saying, Dan, you did that for like the last 10 minutes. No, we're going to be talking about the city of Salem, and more importantly, about yet another localized attempt to deal with the homeless crisis. Now, in this case, at their city council meeting last night, Salem took a pretty big step toward banning sitting and lying on its sidewalks during the day. Here's how one councilor described this whole thing.
We're stuck with a horrible situation, and I think this is making the best of it, which is still not a good situation.
All right, that's Tom Anderson. He said that before council voted. The final count, 7-1 in favor of this ban. Now, they do need to vote one more time to make it all official, but last night was a pretty big fat sign that this thing is very likely going to pass. Now, to be clear, when Anderson talks about a horrible situation, this is what he's thinking of. This is video from downtown Salem. We showed this to you last week. People lying on the sidewalks, sleeping there, up and down sidewalks, right in downtown. It is jarring to look at. There aren't public restrooms readily available down there, so it's obviously unsanitary. And if you are driving or you are walking through downtown, it is impossible to miss. In fact, we got an email just today from a business owner who said after 17 years operating there, he's moving his printing shop out of downtown Salem because he flat out can't take it anymore. Now, the crux of the city's dilemma here is courts have said cities can't enact bans like this, booting people from public property, unless they find somewhere for homeless people to go. Now, if you've seen our coverage here, you know that Maggie Vespa has been all over this story. You were in Salem last night covering it. You join us here now. The city's solution to that last bit is an interesting one. They plan to hang a giant tarp over a public park.
Yeah, exactly. It's a 7,000 square foot tarp, and it's one of two options that officials sort of suggested at the meeting last night. It's also obviously the more eye-catching one, and it's the only one that's going to be readily available at all hours. And based on what we heard last night, it's a go.
All right, let's get specific. Here's the park. It's Marion Square Park, and it's in downtown Salem along Front Street near Highway 22. The city wants to hang a 7,000 square foot tarp over this space. That'll cost them $5,200 a month or $62,000 a year. They'd also pay $19,000 a month for security and $5,000 a month to install and maintain 2 porta potties, which the city already owns. The city is also working with Arches, a nonprofit that already serves homeless people in Salem. They can take 128 people into their day center, but they can only do it between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. And the ban boots people off of Salem sidewalks between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. So Arches can only help some of the time. Pouring salt into Salem's wound, the city was on track to pay Arches to extend the day center's hours and fix that problem. But to do that, they needed $74,000 a month from the state. And the bill promising that cash died during the GOP walkout over cap and trade. So now Salem is scrambling to set up a tarp over a park by the end of the month. City councilors last night argued it's way more humane than this, and it'll help businesses downtown stay afloat. Because frankly, this, they say, is keeping customers away.
We have zombie carts.
Here's what people at the meeting had to say last night.
It targets the homeless. For this and other reasons, the $250 fine proposed as part of the ordinance is obscene.
Pass the sit-lie ordinance immediately, with or without the provisions regarding additional shelter space for day spaces. Your economic base, the businesses in the downtown region are all at risk.
It is a travesty. It is inhumane. It is cruel. And that isn't who we are in Salem.
So obviously the Salem City Council disagreed with that last line because, again, they approved this first reading of this ordinance 7-1. They need to vote one more time to make this thing official, and that's now been scheduled for 2 weeks from yesterday, which is Monday, March 23rd.
And if they approve it during that vote, it's a go.
Assuming nothing crazy happens, of course it always could. We're talking about politics, but yeah, if nothing kind of comes out of the blue and screws this up, this would enact immediately.
Now, people who advocate for the homeless community, typically they sue for something like this. This could end up in a courtroom somewhere very, very quickly.
100%. There was a big precedent a few years ago in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and basically it said that bans like this were unconstitutional if they happen in cities where homeless people have nowhere to go. They don't have enough shelter space, which we know Salem has struggled with in the past. And around that same time, advocacy groups started monitoring ordinances like this. One of them is called the National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty. It's out of D.C. And according to their research, as of last year, 55% of U.S. cities had one or more laws on the books prohibiting sitting or lying down in public, kind of like this one. The number of ordinances like this across the country has jumped 78% since 2006. And that said, according to the center's own studies, when ordinances like this are challenged in court, they're struck down around 57% of the time. And it is worth noting again, the city of Salem has flirted with ideas like this in the past, but they never really moved forward with it because they didn't have that shelter space. And now we're talking about this tarp over the park and the day shelter space. And I'm told that the legal staff with the city of Salem are confident that this one, because of those factors, will hold up in court.